Man does not live in the past, yet he can never fully remove it from within himself. That moment may be over, but its echo lingers. The words were spoken long ago, yet they still ring in your ears. The day has passed, but it remains alive in your heart. Because we do not live with the past itself, we live with the meaning we attach to it. And meaning does not change with time, it changes with prayer. This is why some things do not need to be relived, but they do need to be re-prayed. So let me ask you, which moment in your past, the one that has never truly healed, is still in need of prayer? Write it in the comments, because some wounds do not close when they are spoken, they close silently when they are prayed over. Ibn Arabi, in Futuhat al-Makkiyah, says, "Time is nothing but an unbroken now." If you find yourself reliving a moment you thought had passed, if the same pain resurfaces when life repeats its pattern, then that wound has not healed. It has only been buried. And nothing that is buried heals by itself. Psychology calls this emotional freezing. An event happens, but in that moment you cannot fully feel what you need to feel. You must survive. You must endure. So you say, "I stayed silent." But your emotion froze there. Years pass, yet the part of you who lived that moment never leaves. Inside you there is still a child, stuck at that very age, asking one haunting question: why me? Prayer is speaking to that frozen child. It is not directed at the past itself. It is directed at the you who is still trapped in it. You whisper, "I have grown now," but you are still there, and I have come to take you out. In Sufism, time is not measured by calendars, but by states of the heart. If a day is long gone, yet your heart still carries it, then that day is not past. And everything your heart still carries must not be silenced. It must be returned to Allah. Prayer is not just asking from God. Prayer is giving back to God what you were never meant to hold. Mevlana says, "Every memory becomes a state, and every state defines your nearness to Allah." If you still feel distant, it is because you are still clutching something inside. You could not forgive yourself. You could not forgive them. You could not release that day. But Allah does not ask you to erase it. He asks you to surrender it. And surrender happens through prayer. In psychology, they call this reframing. You cannot change what happened, but you can change the meaning you give it. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen?" you begin to ask, "What did this teach me?" In Sufism, this transformation takes place through prayer. Because prayer is not only requesting, it is releasing. It is handing over the pain, the past, the shame, the tears, one by one, into the hands of Allah, and saying, "I give this to you. I no longer carry it." Ibn Arabi teaches that time has three faces: the outer time, what passes on calendars; the inner time, what lives in your heart; and the true time, what only Allah knows. You may have lived something 10 years ago, yet if your heart still carries it as if it were yesterday, then it is still alive in the inner time. And whatever still lives in the inner time can be rewritten through prayer, because the inner time does not follow calendars. It follows where you turn your heart. You may think you've prayed many times, but those prayers were always for the future, for something to happen, for something to end, for a door to open. But have you ever prayed for the past? For something that already happened? That one moment that still quietly breaks you inside. Have you ever spoken that to Allah? Maybe it was a false accusation. Maybe it was the humiliation you faced as a child. Maybe it was a loss you never had the courage to name. Maybe it was the weight of a sin that was never yours. Or maybe it was the memory of a person whose very name you cannot bear to hear even today. Prayer, in this sense, is turning back to that burden and saying, I am still hurt by you, but now I hand you over to Allah. And when you do this, something happens. Your eyes may not flood with tears, you may not scream, but deep within you, a voice finally falls silent. That echo that has spoken for years is finally answered, and that answer has a name: healing. And healing is not hidden in time, it is hidden in prayer. Junaid al-Baghdadi once said, "The heart expands in prayer, because prayer does not place the past inside you, it places Allah inside you." Every time you pray, you are not calling back the past, you are calling Allah into it. And that call pulls you out, not from time, but from the wound itself. Now you begin to realize you were not carrying the past. It was the past that was carrying you, and yet you never once invited Allah into it. But Allah is not only the Lord of your future, He is the witness of every moment you have ever lived, and every witness finds completion only when surrendered back to Him. So now it is time to return to that broken moment. Time to pray for yourself as you were back then, because you were never truly alone on that day, and you will never be alone again. Often to survive, we freeze our feelings. A cruel word wounds us, an abandonment shakes us, a dream shatters. But in that moment, we do not cry, we do not scream, we do not make a sound. Sometimes silence is the only way to endure, but silence does not end the feeling. It stays inside, it grows, it becomes a shadow. And then one day, when you think you've forgotten it, you realize it has been ruling over you. Psychology calls this a frozen state, when emotions that were never felt, never expressed, never lived through, leave their trace in your body, your mind, even your personality. You may no longer recall the moment, but it still shapes you. If you live with the constant fear of abandonment, it is because once you were left behind. If you spend your life trying to please everyone, it is because once you felt invisible. If you cannot take a single step without the approval of others, it is because as a child, love only reached you with conditions. These structures are not built by logic, they are built by pain. And logic cannot undo them. They only dissolve through prayer. Ibn Arabi says, "The heart never forgets. Your mind may silence it, your tongue may deny it, but the heart never forgets what it has seen." Because the heart is not only the seat of emotion, it is the seat of witness. The heart sees, the heart carries, the heart keeps, and whatever it keeps is what builds your today. Why is it that some people relive the same wound in every relationship? Why do the people who enter their life always hurt them in the same way? Why is it that when someone leaves, the emptiness never fills? Because that emptiness has nothing to do with the person. It was never opened by them. That person only revealed the emptiness that was already there. And that emptiness can only close when you return to the past. But returning to the past doesn't mean reliving the day. It means praying over it. Psychotherapy tells us to recognize a feeling is to have the courage to feel it. Sufism says to carry a feeling to Allah is to return it to its source. For every pain hides a secret, and every secret is unlocked through prayer. Rumi once said, "Love the wounds inside you, for they are the roads that lead you to Allah." But most people avoid that road because it is dark, it hurts, it trembles with the echoes of the past. Yet if you walk it with prayer, you will never walk alone. Allah Himself becomes your companion on that road, bringing you face to face with your old self, but this time with healing. So, which version of you is still waiting for a prayer? Perhaps the child who was belittled, perhaps the youth who was betrayed, perhaps the woman who could not speak, perhaps the man who stayed silent in helplessness. They are all still within you, and they are all still waiting for a prayer. But you speak from today, with today's words, today's voice. Back then, your voice was different. Back then, silence was your language. Now you must answer that silence with prayer. Ibn Arabi said, "The heart is not shaped by the time of the past, but by the bond it forms with it. And that bond is direction. And direction is prayer." So if you are still angry at the past, you are bound to it. If you are still rebelling, you are bound to it. If you still cannot forgive, you are chained to it. Prayer is what turns that direction. It is what turns the heart back toward its Creator. This is where psychological defense mechanisms come in. The mind denies the pain, it minimizes it, it mocks it, it buries it. But the heart knows the truth. If the heart still aches from the same wound, then Allah's name has not yet been spoken there. Prayer has not yet been made. Surrender has not yet been given. Because some pains cannot be lifted by reason alone. They can only be lightened by Allah. Junaid al-Baghdadi said, "A heart that does not surrender is forever a prisoner of the past." Surrender is not resignation. It is not passivity. It is not indifference. Surrender means leaving what has been as it is, with Allah, and choosing not to carry it anymore. That choice is prayer. So now, close your eyes, write a letter or a prayer to the version of yourself in the past, not in today's voice, but in the voice of that self. What did they need? Love? Protection? Simply to be heard? Place that need into Allah's hands today, because back then you did not receive it. But today, Allah can give it to you. Psychology tries to analyze the past. Sufism surrenders it, and when the two meet, healing appears. At that point, you are no longer fighting your past. When you pray over it, you are not trying to fix it yourself. You are giving it back to Allah, and in giving it back, you are not only emptying your heart, you are rebuilding it. You misunderstood time. You thought it was only hours and days passing by. But time is not what you move through. It is the mirror that moves through you. And if that mirror still carries the marks of the past, you cannot truly see today.
Even while living in the present, you remain trapped in yesterday. Because you do not live only in what you experienced, you live in the meaning you gave it. For Ibn Arabi, time is not a fixed ribbon. It is a center, and every heart that turns toward that center
Transforms the past through meaning. In the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, he writes, "Time appears to flow, but in truth it draws you in. You think you are watching time, but time is watching you. It does not only record what you lived, it watches what you learned." So prayer is not only turning toward Allah, it is also looking time in the eye and saying, "I have changed. I am no longer that person. I entrust that version of myself to you." Because time is not simply something you go through, It is something that bears witness to you, and every witness requires surrender. Yes, maybe you were abandoned, maybe you were betrayed, maybe you were unseen, unloved, or misunderstood. But notice, even if those events never happen again, you still carry them, and that carrying keeps time from transforming you. For time is not only what passes, it is what renews. In Sufi teaching, this is called Hali Sabit, a self that looks like it is moving forward but is really stuck in the same place. If years later you still approach people with the same fears and the same patterns, you have not truly moved. Only the clock has moved. Time itself has not touched you, and this resistance to the past hurts you most of all. Why is the past so powerful? Because in those moments you didn't just experience events, you built your identity. That day you were abandoned, loneliness became more than an experience. It became a definition. I am someone who is left behind. And even years later, if you still fear that people will always leave you, the problem is not the past itself. It is the identity you gave to the past. And that identity cannot be broken without prayer. In psychology, this is called a core belief, the unconscious sentences you keep repeating about yourself. I am not loved. I am not seen. I always lose. I am always kept waiting. When you recognize these sentences, you reach a crossroads. You can either keep living lives that prove them true, or you can hand them to Allah in prayer and let Him write a new truth for you. Prayer is that act of rewriting. It is a reality that you did not write, but that is written through you, because every prayer you make today is the voice of a child who once stayed silent, the cry of a youth who once was betrayed, the tears of a mother, the sigh of a father, or the wordless plea of a version of you who never spoke, now finally speaking to Allah. Rumi said, "You think the tongue makes prayer while the heart stays silent. But in truth, the heart itself is the prayer." A prayer for the past is not the tongue speaking again. It is the heart itself returning to speech, not with words, but with meaning. And meaning is everything. You cannot change what happened, but you can change the meaning you give it. And when the meaning changes, even if the past stays the same, you are no longer the same. Ibn Arabi said that every moment has sons of time, meaning every experience is like a birth within time. But some of those births are incomplete. They broke, they were left unfinished. And so now, you return to complete them, not with a time machine, but with prayer. Because prayer is sending light back into the broken hour of your past. Maybe years ago you cried out, "Oh Allah, enough," and Allah seemed silent. But it wasn't because He abandoned you, it was because you were only weeping. You had not yet surrendered. And now, when you say, "Oh Allah, I give you that day," suddenly that old prayer is accepted. Because acceptance is not always immediate. Sometimes it arrives when you are ready. Sometimes it arrives when you step into a new identity, and the prayer of your old self finally echoes back. In psychology, this is called re-script therapy, rewriting the meaning of a traumatic memory. In Sufism, it is called Tawhidi vision, seeing all things as from Allah. If you curse the day, that day will imprison you. If you accept it, that day will transform you. And transformation begins only by Allah's permission. It is your prayer that awakens it, and it is that prayer that carries you into the present. So no, prayer does not bend time, but prayer can turn time in favor of your soul. You cannot erase the day, but you can send a new voice into it. And sometimes all it takes is a whisper. "O Allah, the one I was that day is still there, but I am here now, and I give that day to you. I do not want to remain there anymore." That whisper travels through time. It finds the you who was left behind, and when that version of you hears it, healing begins. Many people try to cover their childhood wounds by refusing to pray, because prayer means calling out, and to call is to hope. But if once, long ago, the one you hoped for left you, you never want to call again. That is why some cannot pray, not because they are angry with Allah, but because they are still carrying the wound of someone who never answered. What psychology calls attachment styles is not just about relationships with people. It is also about the way you pray. The anxious one prays but always waits for an answer. The avoidant one prays too quickly, too briefly. The disorganized one says they love Allah but never fully trust Him. Because the map of attachment formed in childhood does not just shape your ties to people, it shapes your tie to Allah. Ibn Arabi said in the Futuhat, "A person imagines his Lord according to his own nature." If someone once left you, you may imagine Allah as one who might leave you too. But that is only an assumption, and assumptions do not speak with truth, but with pain. This is why praying for the past is not just about accepting what happened. It is about correcting the image of Allah you mistakenly built out of your wound. Some wounds cannot close with time. They cannot close with therapy alone. They close only when prayer turns back toward them. When you cried as a child and no one came, even now as an adult, you may hesitate to ask for help, because your mind remembers that call disappearing into silence. But prayer begins precisely with that word, help. And so for some people, praying feels impossible, because asking for help drags them back to that helpless night of childhood. And the subconscious whispers, if you ask again, you'll be left again. If you hope again, you'll be broken again. To pray for the past is to break this whisper, to declare, I am no longer that child, but Allah is still the same Rahman. Rumi tells a story in the Masnavi. A man once stole as a child and spent years crushed by guilt, so ashamed that he could not pray. One night, weeping, he said, "O Allah, even as a child I turned from you. How can I come to you now?" And Allah replied, "You were at my door before you ever knocked. I did not wait for your prayer. I waited for your forgiveness of yourself." This is why praying for the past is not only giving the event back to Allah, it is giving your past self back to His mercy, because that child within you is still there, still crying, and until you quiet that child with prayer, you cannot step fully into your new life. Carl Jung said of the unconscious, "What is repressed does not disappear. It only changes place." What you refused to pray about back then, that silence is still the root of today's silence in prayer. And until you lift it, you cannot remove the veil between you and Allah. Ibn Arabi developed an inner understanding of prayer, that prayer is not only asking, it is recognizing. When you bring a wound from your past into prayer, you begin to recognize the divine wisdom hidden within it. For every hardship is a message of Allah, and unless you pray over it, you never hear the message. Some try to heal by forgetting the past, but healing without remembering is like peace without roots. You may forget the people who broke you, but you cannot forget the states you were broken in. Those states repeat, in different faces, in different cities, but with the same pain. This is why prayer for the past is not for a person, it is for a state. So that state will no longer repeat. And Allah, when you finally ask, breaks the cycle. And His answer is simple. Now you understand why it kept happening.